Hello students, hope you all are safe and fine at your homes. Welcome back and let's proceed with our same chapter life processes and a new topic, that is respiration. So respiration and breathing, these are the two words which are usually misunderstood, though they look same, they sound same, they are not, because respiration is always intracellular process, that is, it occurs inside the cell, whereas breathing is extracellular process, that is, it occurs outside the cell. So when you define this breathing, we can simply say that it is a physical process where there is inhalation of oxygen and exhalation of carbon dioxide. And when we say respiration, so respiration is always intracellular biochemical process where food is oxidized to release energy and some byproducts which are in the form of carbon dioxide, water, etc. So here we have got a difference between this breathing and the respiration first. Obviously, we are going to deal with both respiration as well as breathing. So look at the difference now. The first difference is breathing is actually a physical process, whereas this respiration is biochemical process. Breathing occurs outside the cell, so you call it as extracellular process. Respiration occurs inside the cell, so we call it as intracellular process. For breathing, no enzymes are required, but when we talk about respiration, it needs enzymes. Like that, whenever breathing occurs, there is no release of energy, that is in the form of ATP. But in case respiration, there is always release of energy. Maybe small amount of energy or a large amount of energy in the form of ATP. And lastly, when you talk about breathing, it occurs in a particular organ, confined to particular organ like skin in frogs, it may be lungs in our case, or gill slits in fishes, etc. But when you talk about this respiration, it always occurs inside the cells of the body, and every cell of the body of plant or animal shows this respiration. So this is what the difference and the concept, important concept about respiration and breathing. So both breathing and respiration are different. In fact, this respiration we can classify or divide it into two categories, as external respiration, which is nothing but the breathing, and internal respiration, which is nothing but intracellular process of breakdown of that food which was assimilated, we discussed in the nutrition topic. So I hope now you understood the difference between these two words, breathing and the respiration. And now here we are going to deal about respiration first, and then we'll talk a little bit about breathing. So when you say about respiration, the definition is important. Definition of respiration is the process of releasing energy from food which is assimilated inside the cells. And this oxidation of food or this breakdown of food may require oxygen, may not require oxygen. And therefore, depending upon requirement of oxygen or no requirement of oxygen, there are two types of respirations. Now what are those two types of respirations? So they are aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Now, why we call this as aerobic respiration? Because it occurs in presence of oxygen. Why we call anaerobic respiration? Because it does not require oxygen. That is, it takes place in absence of oxygen. Now this aerobic respiration produces more energy in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. That is, 38 ATPs are produced when one molecule of glucose is completely oxidized. Whereas in case of anaerobic respiration, when one molecule of glucose is broken down, comparatively less energy is produced, that is 2 ATPs. Then when you talk about this aerobic respiration, why there is more amount of energy released is but obviously because there is complete breakdown of the food. There is complete oxidation of the substrate. And in case this anaerobic respiration, why only 2 ATPs are generated? And the reason is there is incomplete breakdown of substrate or a food. Now here we have got equations of both aerobic and anaerobic respirations. So when you talk about the overall equation of this aerobic respiration, it is C6H12O6, that is glucose, broken down in presence of this 6O2, oxygen. And then the end products formed are 6 carbon dioxide, 6 H2O molecules, and 38 ATPs are formed, which is 686 kilocalories. So you need to by heart this equation. It is important. We are going to elaborate this process in the next part of this video. Now when you talk about anaerobic respiration, it can also be called as fermentation, and it does not require oxygen. As there is no oxygen, there is incomplete breakdown, and a result of this incomplete breakdown is less ATP formation. That is, 2 ATPs are formed. So here we have got two ways how this glucose is broken down in absence of oxygen. These two ways depends upon the end products formed. This anaerobic respiration can also be referred as fermentation. So depending upon the end product formed here, there are two types of these fermentations. The first end product formed here is ethanol or ethyl alcohol. Therefore, we can call it as ethyl alcohol fermentation. And the second end product formed here is lactic acid. Therefore, we can call it as lactic acid fermentation. So the equations are C6H12O6, that is glucose is oxidized in absence of oxygen into ethyl alcohol, carbon dioxide, and energy. And the equation of lactic acid fermentation is C6H12O6 or glucose in absence of oxygen converted into lactic acid and energy, no carbon dioxide is released. Keep this point in your mind that in lactic acid fermentation no carbon dioxide is evolved. So these are the two types of respirations. Both these respirations occur inside the cell, that is, they are intracellular processes. Now this aerobic respiration occurs in two parts of the cells. One part of the cell is cytoplasm and the second part of the cell is mitochondria. And as we all know that a mitochondria are the powerhouse of cell, more energy is produced in this aerobic respiration. Whereas this anaerobic respiration occurs only in cytoplasm, not in mitochondria, and hence less amount of energy is produced during this anaerobic respiration. Well, here is the elaborated presentation of both the equations, children. Just have a glance. Both the types of the respirations elaborated. Aerobic respiration, I told you it occurs in two parts of the cells, cytoplasm, mitochondria. So first step involved is this conversion of this glucose into pyruvic acid or pyruvate. So you can write pyruvate as it is mentioned in your textbook. So first step is that conversion of glucose occurs in pyruvic acid or a pyruvate, that is 1 mole of glucose broken down into 2 moles of pyruvic acid. This is 6 carbon compound, this is 3 carbon compound. So one 6 carbon compound is broken down into 2 3 carbon compounds, that is pyruvic acid. The process occurs in the cytoplasm and this is called as glycolysis. And this process is common to both the respirations, aerobic as well as anaerobic respiration. So you can check here also in anaerobic respiration, first step is same, conversion of 1 mole of glucose into 2 moles of pyruvic acid. Inside the cytoplasm, process is glycolysis. In lactic acid fermentation also, glucose is converted into pyruvic acid. Same 1 molecule of glucose is converted into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. Inside cytoplasm, process is called as a glycolysis. So this is common to all 3 types of respirations here. Now what is different here is, after this process in aerobic respiration, this pyruvic acid inside mitochondria in presence of oxygen is converted into carbon dioxide, water and energy. So this energy is again in the form of ATP. Large amount of ATP is produced, that is 38 ATPs or 686 kilocalorie energy is produced, and these two are the byproducts or the end products, carbon dioxide and water. Fine. Now when it comes to anaerobic respiration or a fermentation, there are 2 types depending upon end products formed. One type is that ethyl alcohol fermentation and the other type is lactic acid fermentation. So when you talk about that ethyl alcohol fermentation and lactic acid fermentation, first step is common here, that is breakdown of 1 molecule of glucose into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. In both the processes, in both the reactions, it occurs in the cytoplasm and we call it as a glycolysis. Here, now this pyruvic acid in absence of oxygen again inside the cytoplasm, and here this pyruvic acid in absence of oxygen again in cytoplasm only, converted into different byproducts or the different end products. So the end product formed here is ethyl alcohol, or we can call it as ethanol, C2H5OH, and carbon dioxide is the byproduct formed along with the energy. As we know that less energy is released, only 2 ATPs are released. And in case lactic acid fermentation, so this lactic acid fermentation occurs in muscle cells when they are starved of oxygen. Also it occurs in some flatworms as they respire anaerobically, and this formation of lactic acid in the muscle cells results into muscular cramps. This ethyl alcohol fermentation is found in case yeast. You need to remember this example for ethyl alcohol fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. So ethyl alcohol fermentation is found in yeast and lactic acid fermentation is found in tapeworm. Then it is found in muscle cells which are starved of oxygen. So end products are same. There is no carbon dioxide released here in lactic acid fermentation. Carbon dioxide energy is the end product here in ethyl alcohol fermentation. Now in your NCERT textbook, the same thing is represented in a diagrammatic form, and you need to learn that diagrammatic form for board examination point of view. So just have a glance, try to understand the concept first, topic first. Okay students, here is a diagram from your textbook, NCERT textbook. Just have a quick glance. Diagrammatic representation of both the types of respirations. It starts with glucose, which is 6 carbon compound, 1 molecule, which is broken down inside the cytoplasm, and this process is common for all. glycolysis. Glyco is glucose and lysis is breakdown. So it is broken down into this pyruvic acid or a pyruvate, 2 moles of 3 carbon, and also there is release of some energy in the form of ATP. Now this splits here into 3 types. As we know, this is in yeast, we call it as a ethyl alcohol fermentation. It does not require oxygen, and the end products formed here are ethyl alcohol, which is 2 carbon compound or a molecule, and the byproducts are 2 carbon dioxides and 2 ATPs are generated. Again, another type of anaerobic respiration we have here is lactic acid fermentation. This occurs in our muscle cells in absence of oxygen, and the end product is lactic acid, which is 3 carbon molecule or a compound along with energy, and this is what the aerobic respiration, which occurs in presence of oxygen, and this needs mitochondria. So carbon dioxide, water and energy is formed as a result of this respiration. So you need to by heart or learn this diagram. It's important from your board point of view. Okay, so now the question is whether all organisms respire like us. The answer is yes. So do plants too respire? Of course they do. Now if they do, then what are the organs or parts for the respiration in plants? So there are different parts or organs through which plants respire. So what are those parts then? So those parts could be different parts like roots, stem, leaves, bark of the stem, etc. So when you go one by one, what parts and how they help in a respiration, we have got here this first part as a roots. So when you say roots, they are in a direct contact with the oxygen present in the soil. So the source of oxygen is obviously it is present in the soil particles, and who comes in contact with this oxygen is root hair. So roots respire with the help of small aperture, small openings present on the surface, and those openings are called as a lenticels. Also they respire through the general surface. So that oxygen moves from a higher concentration towards the lower concentration by the process of diffusion, and ultimately the carbon dioxide which is produced inside the cells of the plants, that will move out from the roots into the soil by the same process which will be called as a diffusion. So this is the same result if you talk about aquatic plants. They can manage, they use that dissolved oxygen, but when it comes to terrestrial plants, they cannot survive for a long time if they are waterlogged for a particular period of a time or a duration of a time. Now why is that so? Because the oxygen will come out from these air spaces and will not be available to these terrestrial plants, and when oxygen will not be available, these terrestrial plants will respire anaerobically. They will produce ethyl alcohol, and that will be harmful or will be lethal, deadly for these plants, and they will die. Remember this. It could be your question. Now likewise, we studied for that roots are the organ of the respiration. Similarly, there will be stem, another organ of a respiration for plants. Now these roots, stem, etc., they do not allow much exchange of gases compared to these leaves, but they do. Now stem also helps in respiration through small openings. Again, we heard the name for those openings, lenticels. So not only lenticels, even certain plants stem has got this stomata. We have heard about this stomata earlier in Ninth standard also, in our first lecture also, I told you to draw the diagram of the same, and I'm sure you must have drawn that diagram by now. So when it comes to stem, there are two types of the stems. Like in some plants, the stem is soft. For example, herbs or herbaceous plants. And some plants, which are large plants usually, trees, they have got a hard stem. So these small plants or herbaceous plants have a soft stem, and that soft stem has stomata through which they respire. And when you talk about woody stem or a large plants or a trees, they have got bark or the outer covering of the stem made up of a dead cells, and that has small openings or a small apertures through which plants respire, that will be called as a lenticels. So these are the organs of respiration in plants in the form of a roots and a stem. But the main organ of exchange of gases or transpiration, photosynthesis and exchange of gases, when you talk, then it comes leaves. So leaves, they perform photosynthesis, they perform respiration. So they have small openings. We have already heard about stomata. So no other part is involved in the respiration here. So they have got only stomata. Now, both respiration and a photosynthesis occur simultaneously. So when it comes to respiration, it occurs day and night. But when you talk about photosynthesis, it occurs mainly during daytime. So sunlight is essential for photosynthesis. So it occurs during daytime. So when we compare photosynthesis and respiration, photosynthesis is faster during daytime and the respiration is slower during night time, right? So when you talk about the rate, so respiration is usually slow during daytime and fast during night time. But when it comes to photosynthesis, photosynthesis is greater or faster during daytime and it is almost absent or stopped during night time, right? Now, whatever the duration is, whatever the time is, the process of this respiration involves this stomata, and we must know about this mechanism of opening and closing of this stomata. So diagram or a structure, already you have studied that. Even I remember I had shown you in your lower class, your 9th standard, practically too, how these stomata they look or appear. So these stomata are formed by two kidney shaped cells in dicots, and they look dumbbell shaped in monocots. So both these cells, kidney shaped cells, they are surrounded by some more cells which will be surrounding cells. We can call them as a mesophyll cells. So each guard cell has got two walls, outer wall and inner wall. Now when you look at the difference, this outer wall is usually thick and less elastic, whereas this inner wall is thin and more elastic. So that helps in opening and closing of this stomata. Now what happens here is, when water from surrounding cells, mesophyll cells, enter inside these guard cells, then turgor pressure inside these guard cells increases. And when turgor pressure inside these guard cells increases, then stomata open. So remember that when water from surrounding cells enter inside the guard cells, turgor pressure increases, and this increase in turgor pressure causes these walls to stretch, and stretching of these walls results into opening of the stomata. And reverse of the same occurs when this water from guard cells moves out, exosmosis. Then as a result of that, turgor pressure will decrease, and when turgor pressure will decrease, this aperture or a stomatal opening will close. So this is the way how these stomata open and they close. So remember this mechanism, it could be your short answer question. So I'm sure now you have understood what are the ways how respiration occurs in plants. What was the difference between respiration and breathing? Go through your NCERT textbook, read the same topic. Feel free to ask questions. You can WhatsApp, you can call. I will be always there for your help. So we will stop here for today. Keep studying. Stay home. Stay safe. Good day.